Welcome back to the channel. This is The Casuals. I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and today's episode is going to be about the time we're not getting back. What is the time we're not getting back? Well, it's specifically the time we're not getting back from our times of playing games. A lot of games, might I add. And so, this segment we wanted to talk about, our stories related to our adventures with playing games. And we have a lot to tell you. So, we're going to split up, each episode by various different titles, and today's title we're going to talk about is the Halo franchise. Both of us have played Halo prior to meeting each other. Might I add, one more extensive than the other. And so I'm going to hand it off to Saki to, tell us about how he started, his journey into the Halo series.
Yeah, so I grew up with the console Xbox by Microsoft, and of course, Halo back then was an exclusive to Microsoft's Xbox, and so of course that's how I got into it. I started off with the very first Halo 1 game. I was a little kid, so I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I was just messing around. I actually played with my brother and my dad for the first games, first three, I believe, Halo 1, 2, and 3. And then when once, the next Halo game came out, I was a lot older. I was in, high school, so I knew what I was doing at the time. So that's technically how I got into it. I just grew up with Halo.
So you grew up with Halo, but I actually did not grow up with Halo. When I was a little kid playing, games on the Xbox, it was mainly Call of Duty, and I didn't even own the Xbox. Funny enough, it was my friend who owned the Xbox, so I would only play the games that he owned. And by pure chance, he happened to have Halo 3. And so I was able to play Halo 3 with, that childhood friend of mine back then when I was in, junior high-ish, maybe elementary school. Um, yeah, so Halo 3 was really the introduction to my Halo series. And I had no knowledge prior to, what Halo was, whether it was 1, 2, or even how Master Chief was a thing. I just thought it was a badass thing when we were fighting the Flood. Um, Turns out, fighting the Flood wasn't the primary, quote unquote, enemy of the Halo franchise series up to a certain point. So, compared to someone who has grown up with Halo versus someone who's only really played Halo, the third Halo, which arguably is one of the most popular. Um, Maybe 2 was more popular, but I feel like 3 was the one where most people started knowing about the Halo franchise. And for someone who's like grown up with that, we ended up discussing about Halo when we first met, and I had no idea Reach existed because back then I didn't use the internet, so it was any game related news I really didn't know about. So my knowledge of released games were very minimal compared to other people. So when you brought up Reach, I believe you had played through Reach already, right?
Yes, I did a full playthrough of Reach already before I met you.
And I remember you talked to me and you were like, "Hey, you remember Halo? Or like, do you know about Halo?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know Halo." It's like, Which one did you play?" "Only 3." You're like, "Well, there's a new game called Halo Reach." I'm like, "That's so cool!" And I believe we ended up. I believe it went up to. The way it went around was you invited me to actually play Reach. I believe that's how it started.
I did. I invited you in. I asked if you wanted to, try it out because I had the game and I had two controllers, and I was like, you know what? This guy likes Halo. Why not try to play with him?
And mind you, I was a very excited kid, someone who's like, a kid who's got a new play toy, So, yeah, that's how our journey of the, Halo Reach started. And I believe Halo Reach was our most played Halo game by far. We loved Halo Reach. And gosh, it was quite the adventure playing the campaign. And and you remember a lot of things when we were playing about our adventures in campaign. Would you like to share some of the stories that you remember? Because I do vaguely remember, but I feel like from your point of view, it would be funnier because I had no idea what was going on. in the beginning.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to share these stories. So feel free to commentate if you do remember some of these. But these are the ones that I just kind of can remember off the top of my head. Because a reminder, this was quite a few years ago. This was about what, like 7 or 8 years ago that we
7
played?
years ago.
7 years ago? Yeah. So yeah. Just feel free to comment if you do remember some of these. So in Halo Reach, each Halo game there's different like levels, around 8 to 10 per game, I would say. And then throughout the game, there was just achievements like Jin was saying earlier that you could do, just kind of getting some specialty things, doing specialty things throughout the game. So where do I start? There's so many. So I guess the first one I can start off with was after we pretty much played through the whole campaign the first time, we went from normal all the way to the hardest difficulty, legendary. And legendary is very difficult, especially on a controller. So if you remember this, let me know. But I remember we restarted the whole campaign, and we had an agreement that we would only use the pulse pistol. And with the pulse pistol, after you shoot, you can only melee for a kill. Do you remember doing that?
I remember doing this, and I think I know what led to this decision. So, um, you know, back then I was very fascinated by everything in Halo. Ranging from, you know, the leads to, the vehicles. The Scorpion tank was awesome when I first saw it. The Wraiths. You got the Wraith, and all sorts of things. But the one thing that I got so obsessed with, especially because it was one of the selling points of the Halo Reach franchise, or Halo Reach, of the Halo franchise, was assassinations. I was very obsessed with that. I think you can remember clearly. Like, I really wanted to
Oh yes.
assassinate every enemy possible.
Oh
And
yes, I do remember that.
you know, being the little crazy dude I was back then, I would assassinate every enemy and, would have a blast doing it. And then you were like, well, normal difficulty is too easy, right? So let's amp up the difficulty. How about legendary? I thought about it, I was just like, sounds great plan. Let's do it. So, with no hesitation, we went into the legendary campaign, and for some inexplicable reason, we decided right off the bat, to put that restriction on, which was you use the what's it called, the plasma pistol, and to melee. But really, that was torture for you. I remember you being very frustrated at the fact that you couldn't use any other weapon.
Yeah,
And
because I will put this in there just for now. I'm a sniper. I like sniping, so far ranged guns are my bread and butter. But for Jin over here, he loves just running up to the first guy he could see. So we have very different playstyles. So it
if
was a
we if
little
we
bit
had
of
to
torture for me.
if we had to make D&D characters, I would probably be the berserker, and you'd probably be like an archer.
Yeah, I would say so. Anything
I
long
would be
range.
the man who just, no think run at enemies. That was basically my plan. So, one enjoyed it, one enjoyed and then the other one didn't enjoy it so much. So I think pretty quickly we ended up putting that restriction off later on.
I
It
think
was just me
about
doing that.
two. Yeah, I think around 2 levels in, just because it was literally I just hide in the back while you run in every single time just to try and get the kills, even though you die on the way up.
Yeah, so the game plan quickly went from, oh, let's do this cool, challenge, to, all right, you stay in the back, you respawn me, and I'm just gonna go in. You're my portable beacon. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's
And
literally how it went.
that was no fun. So understandably, we changed the restrictions, and we ended up completing the legendary campaign.
Yes, we did. So that was our first little challenge story. I have a few more in my bag here. So let's get on to that second one. Let's see if you can remember this. So I believe in the third level is when you get this like laser like beacon like ordnance. So basically what you do is you have this little like laser like ordnance gun, and you hold down a position where you want this massive like barrage of missiles to come through in a certain area. So one of the achievements we were going for was to destroy 2 wraiths, which are 2 of the alien tanks, with 1 use of the laser, which, is the missile barrage. So what I told Jin to do was, hey, this level has 2 right here. This is perfect. But they were a little bit too far apart to hit both with 1. So I told him, hey, go run up there into the middle of them so they both charge at you and try to run you over, and then I'll use the laser. So, well, he ran up there. I got in position. I got the laser off. The missiles came down, and I was like, dude, I got that achievement. I did it. And he's silent, and I looked at him like, why are you so silent? And he's like, you murdered me too. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do actually remember something like that. So I believe what happened in my thought process was, okay, I'm gonna be the bait. He's gonna get the achievement. He's gonna get the race, 2 race in 1, laser ordnance missile barrage, right? And it's gonna be cool. But apparently, I did not think about the fact that there's friendly fire in the game, and if there's explosive things near you, you die. And clearly, I was very surprised at this revelation that, this laser ordinance would kill me, judging by how, I went silent. And he must have been thinking that my thought process, I was betrayed. I was betrayed by my partner in crime. As if I was not important at all. I think that's why I was silent. I vaguely remember being absolutely murdered while you were celebrating the achievement.
Yeah, because I did not tell you there is friendly fire in that game. I did forget to mention that before we started playing.
Yeah, I think, surprisingly enough, during our first playthrough and our second playthrough with the legendary run, we hadn't really team killed each other.
No, because we have such different play styles that where I was aiming was nowhere near where you were, so we never had to run into that trouble.
Then the laser ordinance came in, and that's when I found out that friendly fire was a thing.
Yep.
Oh,
so, again, I am sorry about that. I totally forgot to mention that to you.
I think I recovered very fast. I think I brushed it off after like 30
Yeah,
seconds.
no, you brushed it off, but you're also because the laser ordinance had two missile barrages, and you said we're restarting the thing, except I'm killing you this time, and so that's how we came to terms. You just did that to me, and we were all good.
The fact that you said that, I just remember that. I remember saying that now. I remember being so pity about it. I'm like, you're gonna do this now. You're gonna experience what I experienced, and you're gonna die to the missile barrage.
Yep, and so I was the bait the second time. I ran in the middle, and he missile barraged my ass.
I don't think I even cared about getting the 2 raids. I think just missile barraged your butt.
Yeah, you didn't care about the achievements. You just wanted revenge a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't think I could get the achievement because during that time, the way co-op worked was you either make on the Xbox specifically, you either make 2 separate Xbox profile and then you do split screen, or you just share the same profile. And I think our first playthrough, I shared the same profile as you. It wasn't until
Right,
way
you
later
were a
that
guest.
I made my own unique, what's it called, Xbox account, whatever, avatar, later
Yeah,
on.
because the first playthrough, you just signed in as a guest under my account.
Yeah. So there was no achievements for me to get.
Right. Oh, good times.
I vaguely remember this one, this one time when I believe it was the very first time we were playing too, or I was playing Reach, the campaign. And you know how the very first level of Reach is you standing out in the, whatever that area is, and then you drive vehicles, right? It's a long vehicle map, surprisingly. And I remember being so confused on where to go. I was lost. So most of the time you had to you had to have me go inside the same warthog as you, and then you would drive around, right? Because you knew where to go, I didn't.
Right.
And there was one instance where we got separated, I believe. And I was like, oh, how do I get to you? And you're like, well, the respawn isn't working because it's during the time Halo Reach had a mechanic where in the campaign where if you got too far from your teammates, they would teleport you to that teammate who is closer to the mission objective, right?
Yes, I
But
do
for some
remember
reason,
that.
the teleport mechanic wasn't working, so we're like, well, I gotta drive over there. And so I took a dinky little, what was the smaller version of the Warhawk? The Mongoose.
Mongoose,
I took the
yes.
Mongoose. And I think I vaguely remember doing this, where I was driving around, I was like, oh, how do I get to you? And you were like pointing out directions, because we were split screen, so you could see exactly what I was doing. You know, I was so focused on trying to find out where to go that you were like, watch out! And I drove off a cliff.
Yeah, you did that a couple times
I
actually,
did that a
because
couple times, but I believe the first time that happened, I was trying to find you, and I drove off the cliff, and then I respawned back to you, and you were like, "Well, you're here one way or the other." So
yep,
that's another memory I have.
yeah, I do remember that. That was great, great times. All right, here's another story for you, or another incidents for you. Let's see if you remember this one. So I forget what map or what level it was. It probably was like 5. It was after we disabled some like anti-aircraft guns, and then we got into planes ourselves, and then we had to uh, disable one like a huge tower. I think it was.
Oh yeah. I
Do you
remember
remember
that
that
mission.
level?
Yeah, I
Okay,
remember.
so
I remember.
after we once we got towards the tower, do you remember there were 2 banshees flying around?
Yes.
Okay, so here's our story. Here's my story at least. You were just trying to run up, go into the little elevator like a normal human would. But me, I wanted to challenge myself. So I did in legendary, I might add. I had a jetpack. And I was trying to hijack one of those banshees. So I was trying to lure it over to me by, just shooting in its general area so it'd look at me and fly towards me. I finally got it to come towards me. I successfully hijacked it. I got so excited. I looked at you and I was like, dude, look, I hijacked the Banshee. I could just fly straight to the top. But I wasn't looking at my screen and I was pulling the jet booster thing and I just flew straight into the tower and immediately exploded and died. Do you remember that?
I think I remember. I think I actually remember that too. I think I remember just being, well, uh, you just died, sir. Because I remember I was like struggling, like I was clearing out the enemies on the ground floor, right? Trying to get up to the tower normally, the way they intended you to do it. And all of a sudden I hear, look, I got the Banshee! And then immediately after I heard the explosion, and I look to your screen and I just see your corpse falling. And I'm just like, what Banshee?
And I look over, I'm like, oh, never mind, I died.
It was just like it was such a like a, how do you say this? It was such a comedic, or not comedic time. I think it was such a like a, the sequencing event was so fast that it went from, look, I got something, to immediately, oh, I'm dead. Now I gotta clear the ground floor with you. So yeah, I do
Yeah.
actually remember that.
Lesson of the day: keep your eyes on the screen.
And I remember in that same mission, do you remember how when you get to the top of the floor, there's like a ton of elites, right?
Is also an invisible one with an energy sword.
Yes. So specifically that invisible one. I remember when we were on the top and you were clearing out the elites, I was looking for the invisible one because I really wanted that energy sword.
Yeah.
And I was out. So there's an inner part and there's an outer part. And the inner part is, has the elevator, I guess shaft, what we'll call it. It's kind of like an elevator booster, rather.
Yeah.
And there's like usually around 2 or 3 elites there with various weapons. And there's an invisible elite, running around. I happen to be outside on the ring. And here's the thing. On that tower, on the very top of the tower with the ring on it, and if you're on the ring, there is no, how do you see this?
Barrier.
There is no bar to
Like a
hold
barrier railing, right?
barrier, or yeah, a barrier of some sort to stop you from falling. And I think you can see where this is going. I was looking for this lead, and I was finding grunts outside because there are grunts that spawn on the outside arena. And I remember just hearing, I remember shooting at the invisible lead. And I was like, oh, this is my opportunity to kill him, because he got I hit him once or twice. His shield was about to break because they give a visual cue as when the enemy shield is about to break. And I get closer to him, and the moment I break his shield, do you remember when elites get their elite shields broken? They tend sometimes, occasionally. It's not rare, but it's not also like super common. Um, Occasionally they get enraged, and they do this whole like animation sequence where they like put their hands in there and they scream or whatever, or like shout in rage.
Yes, I do know that.
That elite did that right when I was in like very close to it, like extremely close to it. Like I'm talking about like we were like awesome buddies at this point with this invisible elite. This elite got so angry that he did the whole animation, and just when I was about to melee him one more time, because me being dumb, I was like, I'm gonna melee him twice and he'll die. As I was about to do the second melee animation, for some inexplicable reason, when he did his rage animation, I don't know what happened. Some player collision model happened. When he raised his arm up, I flew off the tower.
I do remember that.
He just flew off. He did not swing at me. Remind you, he did not swing at me with an energy sword because I would have died.
Right.
It's a one-hit kill in legendary mode. With the energy, with them using the energy sword. I don't know what happened. Some weird model collision happened, and I flew off the tower. I went from about to melee him, and then as I meleeed, all I could see is like me meleeing the air, like the emptiness of the air, and me just quickly accelerating to my death towards the ground. And I was just like, what just happened? And I died, and you're like, what just happened? And I was just like, I don't know, I just flew off the tower. You're like, how'd you fly off the tower? I'm like, I don't know. I was very confused, and you ended up having to deal with all of the elites because Halo Reach does not allow your partner or anyone else to respawn while you're in active combat. And unfortunately, that tower is filled with active combat. So this whole time, I just had to watch you take care of the elites one by one.
Yeah. There's also, I don't know if you remember this one, there's also another instance where instead of you getting knocked off, it was me. So the invisible guy came up behind me, jump scared me because he's invisible. He actually hit me with the sword, so he insta-killed me. I got launched off. You see my corpse just falling down. Remember those banshees I was talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, one hit my body, like a crash, like my body just flew right into the banshee and it broke, and it caused the banshee to hit a rock and blow up as well. So it was like a win-win. It was like that was one of the classics because I got slashed by the sword. I flew off, and as my body's falling, it landed on a banshee, and because gravity. My body hitting the banshee made its I guess its AI course of where it's supposed to fly around. It shifted it, so it turned the banshee pointing down instead of going straight, and it ended up flying into a rock.
I have actually no recollection of this, so this must have happened when I was very busy fighting like some other enemy.
Oh yeah, you were doing you were just going around, running around, and I was like, oh, maybe that, because we couldn't find the invisible guy. We found everyone else, so I was like, maybe he's outside, and I was like running around outside. I just stopped for a second to readjust my hands on the controller, and I died, and I was like, well, I found him, and then that's when that happened.
I see. Oh gosh. Man, we're getting close to the time to finish up our episode, so we're gonna conclude with one more story. Do you want to share a story, or should I share a story? Because I remember one very interesting thing that we kind of messed around with.
I think I know what you're thinking. Let me share what I have, and you share what you have, like just a quick little summary, and see which one is more interesting to share for the last story.
All right, go ahead, your turn.
You're thinking of the Pillar of Autumn cliff jump to assassination.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
I knew it. I knew right. You said that. Or you kind of hinted at it. You had a funny thing. I'm like, I know exactly what he's going to talk about.
All right. So
do you want to leave this one up?
Yeah. So there's a very specific, I guess, location in the Pillar of Autumn mission where it's not right away. You have to go through quite a bit first in order to reach this place. But once you reach this place, you're on a cliff. And if you look down, there's multiple enemies, scattered around about, but not alerted. they're unaware that you're above them. So what happens is, first time we played through, and I think the first legendary playthrough we had, we did it normally. You know,
We
just
walked down
go
the
straight
side of the
down.
map.
Yeah, we walked on the right side, right, and then we eliminated them. Whatever, and then moved on. I think multiple plays later, like I think on the third or fourth one, when we were achievement hunting, you brought up this thing where you're like, "Hey, I know you like assassinations, and there's this one mission, or there's this one achievement in the Pillar of Autumn. Remember that elite that's on the ground?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well," and you were like, "Well, I gotta tell you this. This is an achievement that you will want." And I believe this is the time where I had my own account at this point in time.
Yes, we both had separate accounts.
You were like, here's like the good stuff. If you jump off the cliff and you manage to land on the elite without touching the ground, and you assassinate him as you land, you will get an achievement. And I was like, sounds good, I'm in. Where do I start? And so we went through the whole thing, right? Went through the first half. I think it's like halfway point. That's when that's where the location appears. We went like for half of the Pillar of Autumn campaign mission, and we finally got there. And you're like, well, this is the place. Now all you gotta do is jump off and hit the elite. And I was like, all right. And I scoped out the best place, right? I stood at the edge of the cliff looking out. I'm like, all right, the elite moves from here, left to right, then right to left, diagonal. I tried pathing everything, right? And I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to take the leap of faith. And you just see me back up, right? And you see me sprint, right? And then you just see me jump off, and I'm just like, I'm gonna get him. And he was standing still, and I was like, I got the target in sight. And then as I was just about to get near him, he starts moving away, and I fall to the ground and die miserably. And you were just sitting there just laughing at me.
I was
so hyped.
I was dying of laughter. And then you're like, all right, I got, we had to reset the spawn checkpoint so they wouldn't notice us again. And I remember the second time you did it, you did the same thing. You mapped out the movements, and you're like, all right, you jumped, you're about to land, you got the assassination, but it was on a grunt that stood right in his way. Literally walked in at the last second and pushed the elite to the side. And he's like, "Get down, Mr. President."
The second time was even worse than the first time because the elite didn't move. Mind you, he did not move. He was right on course to get this elite and get this assassination. But no, this grunt had to, little grunt just, had to wave his hand happily and then push the grunt or the elite out of his way. Just, because movement, collision, hitbox, grunt will take priority because he's the one actually moving. So he pushed the elite out of the way, assassinate this grunt, and you just see this elite turn around, and he's like, what? And then he immediately kills me. And I was so frustrated about that, and you just kept on laughing because it was the second attempt right away. It was literally the attempt right after I failed the first time.
Yeah, just a quick little disclosure. This took like hours.
Yes, it took
attempts.
I think 2 hours for us.
Yeah.
For me to finally get it. That's how long it took for me because for some reason the game was like, we know you're trying to get the achievement. So we're not gonna let you do it. And there was
Luck
one
was
I
not
remember
on your side.
Yeah, it was not on my side. And I remember there was another part where I got the assassination. There is a rare chance, or a weird thing you can do where if you hit the ground, there is still a split second where the damage does not register when you hit the ground. It's some kind of weird, I guess, registration thing. But if you can do that, if you can pull an assassination within the split second that you touch the ground, you can still do an assassination without taking any fall damage, right? But that doesn't count because the game knows you touched the ground. Right. And that's happened to me multiple times where I touched the ground, assassinated, but because I managed to cancel out the fall damage with the assassination, it looked like I got the achievement, but I didn't.
Yep, that happened many times.
Yes, and it wasn't until finally later I got that sweet victory.
And then we went out to celebrate.
Yes, with junk food in 7-Eleven, which we can talk about in next week's episode, actually. Speaking of next week's episode, we're almost, we should be closing this one up. So, that has been a lot of talk with our Adventures of the Halo series, and we have still so much more to talk about, which will be coming in the next 2 weeks, I believe, depending on our rotation of our weekly segments. So keep an eye out for that in the following weeks. So we're gonna close it here. And so I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and this has been the Casuals, and we will see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.